Valery Mikhailovich Sablin was a Soviet naval officer who, in November of 1975, noticed the rampant corruption and stagnation of Leonid Brezhnev's Soviet Union, and he then led a mutiny on the Soviet anti-submarine frigate Storozhevoy in the hope of starting a new Leninist political revolution in the Soviet Union and completely overthrowing the government. Sablin strongly believed that Brezhnev's regime had sold out from the revolutionary ideas and that he had held so dear, and saw the political structure of clear favoritism in the Communist Party as an abandonment of Leninism by the Communists, and he believed that the only way to correct this corruption and stagnation was a new revolution to replace the incumbent government. The mutiny was on November 8th, where, as political commissar, Captain 3rd Rank, Sablin seized the Storozhevoy and confined the ship's captain and other officers into the wardroom. Sablin's plan was to take the ship from the Gulf of Riga north into the Gulf of Finland and to Leningrad through the Neva River, mooring the decommissioned cruiser Aurora, which was a symbol of the Russian Revolution. There he would make a protest by radio and television against the rampant corruption of the Brezhnev era. He was going to trash the bureaucratic system and how much everything sucked under Brezhnev, which he saw as not real communism, and called for a new Russian revolution. Sablin detained the captain and other officers, where he then made a passionate speech to the crew. However, Sablin's mutiny would end up a failure, as just when everything was going great for him, where the entire crew was on board with his plan, a junior officer escaped from confinement and snitched for assistance from the Soviet Union, which properly terrified Soviet leadership. When the Storozhevoy cleared the mouth of the Gulf of Riga, planes and ships were in pursuit, firing warning shots across the bow. Several bombs were dropped in front of and behind the ship, where the crew initially didn't care, but they soon realized their situation. Storozhevoy's steering was damaged, and she eventually came to a stop. It was at this point where Sablin's crew decided to flip sides and free the captain. The frigate was boarded by Soviet Marine commandos, and Sablin had been shot in the knee by the captain of the ship and was then detained by the crew. Upon his return to port, Sablin was brutally beaten, arrested, and imprisoned by the KGB. While in custody, he was starved, tortured, interrogated, and provided only minimal medical attention. So, average communist stuff. He was subsequently charged with treason, court-martialed in June of 1976, and since you know what he did, he was definitely found guilty. Although this crime usually carried a 15-year prison sentence, this is the Soviet Union, and Sablin was executed on August 3rd, 1976. His second-in-command during the mutiny, Alexander Shane, received an 8-year prison sentence while other mutineers were free to go. I'd also like to point out that this incident inspired the hunt for Red October. You see, American intelligence believed that the ship making from Leningrad to Riga must initially be heading west toward the Swedish island of Gotland. Sablin steered this course, which could have given the mistaken impression that the Storozhevoy was heading to Sweden or even NATO member Denmark instead of Leningrad. Until the end of the Cold War, American intelligence believed that the crew had planned to defect. Changes in order to create a successful revolution would be just for Sablin to get to Leningrad, and in order for that to happen, the only thing that needs to happen is for that one snitch junior officer must remain confined. Given the fact that Brezhnev himself was awakened in the middle of the night and the entire Soviet Navy brass was terrified of Sablin's actions, I feel like many within the USSR would be cool with Sablin's revolution. Also, there was the fact that life in the Soviet Union under Brezhnev was total crap, and that Sablin was pretty much saying what everyone else was thinking. Now that there has been a successful mutiny and Sablin has broadcasted his message to Leningrad, what's going to happen? Well, first, most people would generally agree with everything that Sablin is saying because he was technically right about the USSR under Brezhnev. It sucked. The Soviet security forces in Leningrad would be ordered to destroy the Storozhevoy and kill Sablin pretty much halfway through his speech. Here's where things will get a little tricky. I don't know who all would be hearing Sablin's broadcast and who all would be ordered to kill him. Therefore, I don't know just how much of the security forces would defect to Sablin's side or if everyone would just follow Brezhnev's orders. But for the sake of this scenario, Sablin's mutiny is successful and he will be able to start a new Russian revolution with security forces defecting to his side left and right as public grievances against Brezhnev's regime are very high. Would this simply be a bloodless coup or a peaceful revolution? Of course not. Sablin's mutiny and subsequent revolution would likely provoke a second Russian civil war instead of a revolution where everyone turns on Brezhnev. Soviet people's reactions to the start of this revolution would be definitely mixed to say the least. Some would agree with Sablin, but most bureaucrats and party officials would condemn him as a madman and side with Brezhnev. Information would play a key role in this revolution as Moscow would be very quick to claim that Sablin is a counter-revolutionary, anti-Soviet, and probably a Western agent. The KGB is going to be working hard to spread this propaganda against Sablin and his supporters. From now on, I'll be referring to Brezhnev's government as the Soviets and Sablin's faction as the revolutionaries. Everyone good with that? Great. The Soviet strength includes the KGB and whatever military forces have not defected to Sablin, as well as most of the bureaucracy, which likely sees opportunism in remaining with Brezhnev. Additional loyalist military forces will include Soviet unions that have not heard of Sablin's broadcast in Leningrad and who are super-censored. The Warsaw Pact will also heavily back the Soviets as they are under pretty Stalinist regimes that are puppets of Moscow and occasionally do the KGB's dirty work for them. Revolutionary strength includes, let's just say, the entire Leningrad garrison to make things interesting, obviously Sablin's frigate, likely ships and planes in bases in Leningrad, and anyone who could be radioed by Leningrad before the Soviets cut off communications from the city. The revolutionaries are supported by most average Soviet citizens, as life sucks under Brezhnev, as I had said constantly before. Sablin just spoke what everyone else was thinking, you know? Man's a mind reader. Revolutionaries are also probably having the support of the Baltic states once they realize what's going on, because the Baltics never really liked being part of the USSR, and they see opportunism in siding with Sablin. Something else that I'll note is that areas controlled by revolutionaries will have likely lots of loyalists as well, so street fighting will be brutal, and that will test the resolve of the revolutionaries and the Soviets alike. Global reactions to Sablin's revolution will definitely be mixed. Starting with China, the Sino-Soviet split had occurred and China had previously opened relations with Nixon. The Chinese will probably support the revolutionaries. Many Soviet troops and advisors on international missions in Africa will be recalled, and Cuba will probably stay with the Soviets, as although Castro would probably see Sablin as a great revolutionary hero, Cuba is getting all of their stuff from the Soviet government. NATO and the US probably stays out of the revolution because of obvious reasons like potential war with the USSR and also nukes, but of course there will probably be lots of intelligence gathering throughout. Results of Sablin's revolution are likely to be a Soviet victory just by the numbers, but the event would be seriously damaging to Soviet prestige abroad. You see, the mid-late 1970s were a high for Soviet PR abroad in our timeline, with a revolution and semi-civil war at home due to competing ideas of communism. The USSR is viewed as very unfavorable in this alternate timeline. Additionally, Soviet international military missions are not going to happen, so potentially Mengistu's Ethiopia won't massacre several million people, but who knows. One thing that is for sure, though, is that no matter how long this revolution lasts, the Soviet Union is going to have to rebuild during the period of stagnation, and over the course there would be lots of purges of suspected revolutionaries. So this would definitely speed up the fall of the USSR in the alternate 1980s. That is one possible scenario for if Sablin's mutiny succeeded in starting another Russian Revolution in 1975. What do you think would have happened? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.